My beloved child. Stop scrolling for just a moment. Do not move past these words too quickly, because what you are about to hear was meant to find you at this exact moment. You may believe this is another ordinary message, another passing voice among countless others, but something within your spirit has already recognized that this moment feels different. There is a reason your heart became still. There is a reason your attention has not wandered away. What is about to unfold is a fictional spiritual story created for reflection and encouragement, yet if it awakens hope or wisdom in your heart, receive it with peace. Not long ago, someone spoke your name where you never expected it to be spoken. It happened quietly. There was no announcement. No dramatic entrance. No warning that your life was becoming the subject of a conversation hidden behind familiar walls. A family member listened while another person shared something about you that no one imagined they would say. Those words did not disappear into the air. They planted questions. They stirred emotions. They awakened thoughts that had been sleeping for far too long. You have spent many days wondering whether anyone truly understands the battles you never explain. You have smiled while carrying invisible burdens. You have encouraged others while secretly asking heaven if anyone notices your own silent prayers. Yet what remained hidden from many eyes has never been hidden from mine. Do not mistake silence for absence. Remember those words. Do not mistake silence for absence. Sometimes I remain quiet because I am preparing something greater than your understanding. Sometimes the answer you seek is already moving toward you while you believe nothing is happening at all. The conversation you know nothing about did not begin with your achievements. It did not begin with your failures. It began with something much deeper. Someone looked at your life and said, "There is more to this person than everyone sees." Those simple words changed the atmosphere. One person laughed at first. Another became thoughtful. A third remained completely silent. Why? Because even they sensed there was something unusual about the way your story continued despite everything that tried to stop it. They remembered moments you had already forgotten. They remembered your kindness when nobody was watching. They remembered the strength you showed after disappointments that could have broken many others. They remembered the tears you never admitted existed. They remembered how you kept walking even when your own confidence seemed ready to collapse. And suddenly the conversation became something no one expected. It became about purpose. There are people who judge only what they can see. There are people who measure lives using possessions, appearance, popularity, or temporary success. But there are also moments when hearts are unexpectedly opened. That conversation became one of those moments. One voice asked quietly, "What if everything happening to them has been preparing them for something greater?" The room grew still. No one answered immediately. Because deep inside, even those who doubted began remembering events they could never fully explain. Have you ever wondered why certain doors closed when you prayed they would open? Have you wondered why relationships ended even though you begged them to remain? Have you wondered why opportunities disappeared moments before they seemed certain? You called those moments disappointments. Heaven called them protection. You called them endings. Heaven called them redirections. You called them delays. Heaven called them preparation. Do not mistake silence for absence. Those words deserve to settle inside your heart once again. Every unseen moment has carried purpose. Every unanswered question has been held within hands stronger than your own. Meanwhile, that conversation continued. One family member began sharing a memory. Another interrupted with a completely different story. Soon everyone realized they were describing the same pattern. Whenever your life seemed ready to collapse completely, something always happened. Sometimes help arrived unexpectedly. Sometimes wisdom appeared through strangers. Sometimes strength came when there should have been none left. Sometimes impossible peace replaced overwhelming fear. No one could fully explain it. Neither could you. Yet they all recognized the pattern. And then someone asked a question that changed everything. What if they don't even realize what heaven has been doing? Silence filled the room again. Because that question reached deeper than anyone intended. You have often believed your greatest battles were invisible. But what if your greatest testimony has also been invisible? What if the miracles you keep waiting for have already been unfolding one quiet step at a time? Not every miracle arrives like thunder. Sometimes miracles whisper. Sometimes they hide inside ordinary mornings. Sometimes they wear the clothing of disappointment before revealing themselves as blessing. Sometimes protection feels exactly like rejection. Sometimes destiny first appears wearing the face of delay. You have misunderstood many seasons because you judged them before they finished speaking. But every unfinished chapter eventually explains the one before it. Listen carefully. There is something you still do not know. That unexpected conversation did not remain inside that room. The thought spoken there continued growing after everyone returned home. One person could not stop thinking about you. Another found themselves praying without planning to. Another began questioning assumptions they had believed for years. Your life became a mirror that reflected something greater than yourself. Not because you are perfect. Not because you have never failed. But because endurance carries a language that every soul recognizes. People forget impressive speeches. People remember faithful hearts. They forget temporary victories. They remember those who refused to surrender when surrender seemed easiest. And although you believed nobody noticed your quiet endurance, heaven noticed. The story is only beginning. The conversation should have ended that evening. Everyone believed those words would disappear like countless ordinary discussions that fade before the next sunrise. Yet something unusual happened after the room became quiet. Long after the voices stopped, the feeling remained. It lingered in every heart that had been present, almost as if an invisible hand refused to let anyone forget what had been spoken about you. One family member lay awake that night, replaying every sentence. They remembered moments from years ago that had never seemed important until now. Small acts of kindness. Quiet sacrifices. Times when you walked away from conflict instead of feeding it. Moments when you chose forgiveness even though no one would have blamed you for holding on to bitterness. The more they remembered, the more confused they became. How did we overlook this for so long, they quietly wondered. Questions began replacing assumptions. They realized they had judged seasons of your life without ever seeing the battles hidden beneath them. They had mistaken your silence for weakness. They had confused your patience with passivity. They had looked at delayed blessings and assumed nothing extraordinary was happening. But now those old conclusions no longer fit. There was another detail no one mentioned aloud. Every person in that room had noticed that whenever life pushed you toward despair, something unseen always seemed to pull you back before you completely fell apart. Not dramatically. Not publicly. Quietly. Almost invisibly. It happened so naturally that most people dismissed it as coincidence. But after enough years, coincidence becomes difficult to believe. One memory led to another. Someone remembered the opportunity you lost that once felt devastating. At the time, everyone pitied you. Yet months later, they quietly admitted that losing it had protected you from a path that would have brought even greater pain. Another remembered a relationship that ended unexpectedly. You believed your heart would never recover. But looking back now, everyone could see that what felt like heartbreak had become the doorway to wisdom you never would have gained otherwise. How many times have you mourned what was actually protecting you? How many tears were shed over closed doors that were never meant to imprison your future? There are moments when heaven's greatest mercy looks exactly like unanswered prayers. That truth is difficult to accept while you're standing in the middle of disappointment. Only later does the picture become clear. As these thoughts spread from one heart to another, something unexpected happened. The conversation about you stopped being about your past. It became about your future. One voice quietly said, "I don't think we've seen the best part of their story yet." No one argued. Instead, everyone became strangely thoughtful. Because deep inside, they sensed your journey was incomplete. They couldn't explain why. There was simply an unshakable feeling that something significant was still approaching. Meanwhile, you continued living your ordinary days, completely unaware that your name had become the center of unexpected reflection. You kept carrying responsibilities. You kept fighting quiet battles. You kept wondering whether your efforts mattered. You kept asking questions that seemed to disappear into silence. But silence is never proof that nothing is happening. Some answers grow in hidden places before they become visible. Seeds spend time underground before anyone celebrates the harvest. You have measured your life by what has not happened yet. Heaven measures it by everything that has been quietly transforming within you. Character before comfort. Wisdom before recognition. Faith before fulfillment. There are preparations that cannot be rushed. Some blessings are heavy enough that the person receiving them must become stronger before they arrive. Had they come earlier, they might have crushed you instead of lifting you. So what felt like delay was often mercy wearing unfamiliar clothing. That realization slowly began settling into the hearts of those who had spoken about you. They started seeing your story differently. Not as a chain of random events, but as a series of carefully timed chapters. Then one final comment was made before everyone went their separate ways. It was spoken so softly that almost no one responded. Yet those words echoed louder than anything else said that evening. I think they are much closer to a turning point than they realize. No one knew how true those words would become. Because even as they were spoken, another piece of the story had already begun unfolding beyond everyone's sight. And what was set in motion next would challenge everything they thought they knew about your journey. The days that followed appeared completely ordinary. Nothing around you seemed different. The same roads, the same responsibilities, the same unanswered questions greeted you each morning. If someone had looked at your life from the outside, they would have assumed nothing had changed. But the greatest shifts rarely announce themselves. They begin quietly, beneath the surface, where no human eye can fully see. There are moments when heaven moves like a rushing wind. There are also moments when heaven moves like the first light before dawn. So gently that only those who remain attentive recognize it. You believed you were waiting. In truth, something else was waiting for you. Without realizing it, the conversation about you continued to ripple outward. One family member shared it with another trusted relative, not to spread gossip, but because they could not shake the feeling that your story carried a deeper meaning. I don't know why, they admitted, but I keep thinking about them. Those simple words opened another unexpected discussion. People who had once focused on your struggles now found themselves talking about your resilience. Those who remembered your disappointments also remembered your determination. Those who had noticed your silence began wondering how much courage it must have taken to keep moving forward without recognition. Sometimes a person's greatest testimony is not spoken by their own lips. Sometimes it is revealed through the reflections of others. You may never hear every conversation where your name is mentioned. You may never know every heart that has quietly changed because of your example. Not every seed you plant is meant for your eyes to witness. Some are planted for a harvest that appears long after you have walked away. As these reflections spread, something unexpected happened inside one particular family member. They remembered a promise they had almost forgotten. Years earlier, they had prayed for wisdom about someone they cared about. At the time, they believed the answer never came. Now, as they thought about your journey, those forgotten words returned to their heart with surprising clarity. What looks delayed is being prepared. The sentence refused to leave their mind. Again and again it echoed within them. What looks delayed is being prepared. Suddenly, many pieces of your story seemed to fit together. The closed doors. The unexpected detours. The relationships that faded. The opportunities that disappeared. None of it seemed meaningless anymore. It resembled preparation. Meanwhile, you continued asking quiet questions no one else could hear. When will something finally change? Have my prayers been forgotten? Does anyone truly see how hard this season has been? The answers did not arrive with thunder. They came through quiet reminders. Every sunrise you were given was another opportunity. Every obstacle that failed to destroy you became another sign of unseen strength. Every disappointment you survived proved your story was still being written. Do not judge your life by unfinished chapters. The ending has not yet been revealed. There are pages ahead that will make the earlier chapters understandable. What feels confusing now may one day become the very reason someone else finds hope. The family member who had spoken about you finally made a decision. I need to reach out. Not because they had all the answers. Not because they understood everything. But because they sensed that encouragement offered at the right moment could become a turning point. Little did they know, their decision would intersect with something already unfolding beyond their understanding. Elsewhere, another event had quietly begun. A path was being prepared. A meeting was drawing closer. A truth long hidden was approaching the moment it would finally be revealed. None of the people involved could yet see how their stories were about to connect. But they were moving toward that moment with every passing day. And when those paths finally crossed, nothing would feel ordinary again. What no one realized was that the pieces had already begun moving into place long before anyone noticed them. Events that seemed unrelated were quietly connecting, like streams flowing toward the same river. A delayed phone call, an unexpected invitation, a chance encounter, a forgotten memory suddenly brought back to life, each appeared ordinary on its own. Yet together they formed a pattern that could only be understood when viewed from a greater perspective. You were never as alone as you believed. Even during the seasons when your prayers seemed to echo into silence, your story was still unfolding. There is a mystery about timing that many people struggle to accept. When nothing appears to be changing, the deepest changes are often taking place beneath the surface. Roots grow before branches. Foundations are laid before walls are raised. Preparation comes before fulfillment. Many people celebrate visible victories without realizing how many invisible seasons made those victories possible. Perhaps you have looked at someone else's life and wondered why their blessings seem to arrive so easily. But comparison hides the truth. You never see the private nights. You never see the silent tears. You never see the moments when hope was tested. Every meaningful journey carries unseen chapters. Yours is no different. As the days continued, the family member who had decided to reach out hesitated again and again. They picked up the phone. Then they put it down. They began writing a message. Then they erased every word. Something inside them whispered, "Wait a little longer." At first, they became frustrated. Why can't I just send it? They didn't understand that the right words often require the right moment. Encouragement given too early can be ignored. Encouragement given at the perfect time can change the direction of a life. While they waited, you faced another challenge. It wasn't the biggest battle you had ever faced. In fact, it looked almost insignificant. A conversation. A disappointment. A familiar feeling of uncertainty. To everyone else, it was just another ordinary day. To you, it felt like one more reason to question whether anything would ever truly change. Yet this small moment revealed something important. Despite your discouragement, you kept moving. You didn't have all the answers. You didn't suddenly feel fearless. You simply chose not to stop. That quiet decision carried more weight than you realized. Sometimes courage is not loud. Sometimes courage is simply taking the next step when you would rather stand still. Far away, the person who had unexpectedly spoken about you found themselves remembering one final detail. They recalled something you once said years ago. It had seemed ordinary at the time. Now it sounded completely different. You had quietly said, "I just hope someday everything makes sense." Those words stayed with them. Because they could finally see what you could not. Many of the things that once looked like setbacks had become the very experiences shaping your wisdom, your compassion, and your resilience. Without those difficult seasons, you would not have become the person capable of carrying what lies ahead. Growth rarely feels exciting while it is happening. It often feels slow, confusing, even painful. But one day you look back and realize you are no longer the person who first entered the storm. You have become stronger without noticing. Wiser without realizing. More compassionate than you ever imagined. And perhaps that is one of the quietest miracles of all. Then, just as everything seemed ready to remain unchanged, something unexpected happened. The family member who had waited finally received news they had never anticipated. It was connected to you. Not through coincidence. Not through rumor. through a truth that had remained hidden until the exact moment it needed to be revealed. They stared at the information in complete silence. Their heartbeat quickened. Suddenly, every conversation, every memory, and every unanswered question began fitting together in a way none of them had imagined. They whispered only a few words before sitting down in disbelief. So, this is what was really happening. At that very same moment, completely unaware of what had just been discovered, you continued living your day as though nothing had changed. But everything had. The next revelation would uncover the one secret no one in that family had seen coming, and once it was spoken aloud, it would become impossible for any of them to see your story the same way again. The silence that followed was unlike any silence they had experienced before. It was not the silence of confusion. It was the silence that comes when scattered pieces suddenly begin forming a complete picture. The family member looked again at what had just been placed before them, searching for another explanation. Surely there had to be one. Surely everything that had happened over the past months could not have been connected in the way it now appeared. Yet the more they reflected, the clearer it became. Every unexpected delay. Every conversation that seemed insignificant. Every meeting that happened at just the right moment. Every closed door that forced a different path. None of it stood alone. It all pointed toward a story that had been unfolding quietly, one step at a time. At first, they wanted to tell everyone immediately. But something urged them to pause. Not every truth is meant to be spoken the moment it is discovered. Some truths need time to settle into the heart before they are shared. So they waited. As they waited, they began noticing something else. Your name kept appearing in unexpected places. Someone mentioned you during an ordinary conversation. An old photograph brought back memories. A message from years ago resurfaced unexpectedly. It felt almost as though every reminder carried the same quiet question. Have we misunderstood this person's journey all along? One by one, those who had once looked only at your setbacks began seeing something entirely different. They no longer saw a life defined by disappointment. They saw perseverance. They no longer remembered only the losses. They remembered how you continued showing kindness even when your own heart was weary. They remembered your willingness to encourage others while carrying burdens you rarely spoke about. That realization humbled them. Sometimes people notice your strength only after enough time has passed for them to understand what you were truly carrying. Meanwhile, your own days still felt ordinary. You woke up with responsibilities. You faced familiar uncertainties. Some prayers still seemed unanswered. Some dreams still appeared distant. From where you stood, it would have been easy to believe nothing significant was happening. Yet unseen preparation often looks exactly like an ordinary day. Every quiet decision mattered. Every act of integrity mattered. Every moment you chose hope instead of bitterness mattered. The future is often shaped by choices that seem almost invisible in the present. Without realizing it, you were becoming ready for something you had prayed about long ago. Not because circumstances had suddenly become easier, but because you had become different. The version of you who once would have reacted with fear now responded with patience. The version of you who once doubted every delay had begun learning endurance. The version of you who once searched for immediate answers had slowly discovered the value of trusting one step at a time. Transformation often happens so gradually that you only recognize it when you look back. Then the family member finally decided it was time. They gathered the others who had been part of that first unexpected conversation. No one knew why they had been called together. The room felt strangely familiar. It was the same place where your name had first become the center of quiet reflection. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Expectation filled the silence. The family member took a slow breath before speaking. I think we've all been looking at this story from the wrong direction. Every eye turned toward them. They continued carefully. We thought we were watching someone struggle. They paused. But perhaps we were actually watching someone being prepared. No one interrupted. The words settled deeply into every heart. Then came one final piece of information, small on the surface, yet powerful enough to change the way they understood everything that had happened. For several moments, no one spoke. Some lowered their heads. Others stared into the distance. It was as though they had finally realized that the chapters they once called failures were, in fact, preparing the next chapter of your journey. And just as that realization settled over the room, a knock came at the door. No one had expected a visitor. No one knew who could possibly be arriving at that exact moment. The family member slowly stood, walked toward the entrance, and reached for the handle. The door opened. The person standing there carried news that would connect every hidden conversation, every unanswered question, and every mysterious event into one unforgettable revelation. The moment they spoke their very first sentence, everyone in the room realized that your story was about to take a turn none of them had ever imagined, and that revelation would change everything.